Nicole Wallace, what do you have your eyes on?
You know, I think these governor's races are, in some ways, they're more exciting, and we're keeping an eye on them. But I keep coming back to the big political earthquake in Washington, D.C., that tomorrow morning Democrats will be figuring out how to run these committees. That, you know, we have had a Trump presidency which has been norm busting and has debased the dialogue. And, you know, most people with kids don't let them turn on the TV when there's political talk on. All of that is unchanged. What changes is that there is now, Democrats will control all the committees that can investigate the other half of sort of the scandal that is the Trump presidency, and that's the rampant corruption. The rampant corruption at the agencies. This is the kinds of stories that you make time for, but a lot of us don't. Almost at every agency, there's been some sort of ethics scandal, and it gets scant media coverage, and it has no oversight in Congress. That all changes tomorrow. Yeah.
Another thing is the control that the House has over all fiscal matters. Everything has to originate in the House. The president cannot have a new tax bill without Nancy Pelosi's approval, which is unlikely. Can't change the entitlement questions about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Can't do any of that stuff that Mitch McConnell was talking about a few weeks ago. All is under the control now of Nancy Pelosi. It's powerful stuff.
Which leads me to believe that Donald Trump is going to be cutting some deals.
He's got it.
He's going to cut some deals because he's at his heart and his core transactional. And we've already seen he doesn't have a problem, at least making those initial entrees to Nancy and Chuck. And now that Nancy has the gavel, the incentive to do that, particularly if he's concerned about legacy and wanting to get at least one big thing done before the 2020 election.
It's going to be an interesting test. I'm very glad you put that. I feel like we're at a sort of fork in the road, and it's not our decision. It's going to be Republicans' decision. Either this is Republicanism with a Trump twist on it, or this is Trumpism, which is built for fighting and not for governing. Right. And what we have seen thus far with him in power and with Republicans in control of both the House and the Senate and having no interest in checking him in any way is that since he's been there, he has used the power that he has as president to consolidate power in his own office, in himself singularly. Right. He's disempowered the cabinet, disempowered all staffers, disempowered all expert advice that he might get from anybody, disempowered the Congress. They say what they want to do, and he just does his own thing anyway. Right. He's consolidated power around himself. He, for the first time, will be checked by another entity that has real, not theoretical, not just media power. Does he crumble in the face of that? Does he see that as a way to just pick new fights? Or does he govern like a Republican might and seek deals? Right. I don't know which way he'll go.
Yeah. I think it's more deal orientation versus crumbling, because the one thing about crumbling, that's failure. And that's not a space he wants to occupy.
He doesn't enjoy confrontation. He's about to get some.
That's right.
But, you know, that's so true what you said, and sharply put, because the Republicans have a problem with health care. They don't have a message. They get hurt on it this time. The House, I think the policy people would say we won the House, Democrats, because of their position on health care. He's got to get beyond this pre-existing condition thing. We had a joke with a moment ago. And I think he also can do something on infrastructure. We got the word from the House Ways and Means Committee tonight, the staff. They're going to do something there. There's a lot of play here for him to get out of trouble. And maybe we'll get an immigration bill. That's the hardest one.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.